And earlier this week, we had on the CEO of Burford Capital, a litigation finance firm listed on London Stock Exchange, or at least an offshoot of it, which had been shorted over the summer and accused of fraudulent accounting practices by Muddy Waters Capital. When asked to respond to the allegations, the CEO had this to say on our air.
I don't have a lot of time to deal with Carson Block and his new sidekick, Stormy Daniels. You know, I think the reality is he makes his money by coming in very rapidly, running a short attack on a business and coming out again. He closed his short on Burford months ago, the day he started making all these allegations. And I think we've comprehensively debunked, and our investors agree, all of these allegations.
All right, joining us now is Muddy Waters founder and chief investment officer Carson Block. Carson, I want to clear up the matter of Stormy Daniels, which was brought up in this comment. That was a reference to a video, a kind of spoofing video that you did in which she made an appearance to suggest that she is a new hanging buddy of yours. Sort of overstates it, right, Mr. Block?
Well, I mean, look, that was a put down by Chris Bogart and of Stormy Daniels, which I think is totally beside the point as to how accurate their accounts are. But right. If the question is, why did we do this video featuring Stormy Daniels? The answer is this. As Chris's comment or put down shows, as an adult film actress, she's not exactly among society's most venerated class of people, yet she is taking on the most powerful person in the country, one of the most powerful people in the world. So if there's anything you can say about my business and my team, it's that we love the David versus Goliath fights, and we respect her, putting the politics aside. So that's one thing that she had going for her. But the other thing was, in that video, we're pushing the boundaries because we're tired of this apologist way of speaking, of covering up, wrongdoing or by powerful people or people who are in the finance industry. Yeah. We wanted to speak very cleanly or very clearly, and we felt that somebody who really wouldn't have a problem pushing that boundary.
Let's move on from the video, which no one has seen. Not no one, but no one on this air has seen, and from Stormy Daniels, and drill down a little bit more on Burford Capital. A lot of your writing and your initial short, as I understand it, was some months ago. Have you exited that short position, or are you short today, and if so, by how much?
So I'm very glad you asked that question, because Chris Bogart told at least one bald-faced lie when you had him in that chair on Tuesday. And that lie was that we had exited our position.
Correct.
Chris knows that is not true. How does he know that is not true? Well, since we first went public in August, I've repeatedly made statements publicly and said that we are short Burford. And we've published, since that initial report, 4 update reports, each one of which says on the cover that we are short Burford Capital. So this is very typical of Chris Bogart, who I've come to really feel is a fundamentally dishonest person. So that was a lie. We are still short Burford.
So, Carson, help us understand, are you still short Burford Capital stock, and have you reduced your short position? So
we are still short Burford Capital stock. Now, when we traded in, you can see there are publicly available records in the EU that show that we had a peak risk position, that because we have a small fund with limited amount of capital, we could not hold. But the stock was also down 70% in 2 days as well. So we reduced risk to one that's sustainable, but it was still an aggressively sized short position. That said, about 1.5 to 2 weeks ago, we trimmed it a little bit ahead of the UK elections, just because we didn't really want to figure out how to try to hedge the beta of that election. But we've been short this company consistently, and it has been an aggressive short position that has been meaningful for our P&L.
I want to go to a couple of things you've said about this company and then try and get, for our viewers' sake, to the heart of your claims about the company. You say Burford's liquidity is risky, it is arguably insolvent, it is a perfect storm for an accounting fiasco, and its governance structures are laughter-inducing. You can pick up on those comments in just a moment, but I want, for the viewers' sake, to understand exactly what it is that you find fault with Burford and its accounting, and let me take a stab at it. It's fundamentally that they deal in esoteric and illiquid, not easily priced assets, and your view is that they use a model that you liken to Enron's model to value those assets, and that they have overvalued them, creating an incorrect financial picture for investors. Have I got that loosely right?
Yes. The key point being that under accounting rules, these are level 3 fair value assets. So there's no market that you can look at and say this is what it's worth. So they get to determine their own marks. And that's fine if they were paid on cash. And when this company first went public, it was a closed-end fund, and Chris Bogart, et cetera, did not have equity in that fund. They were paid a 2 and 20. That's fine because you get paid on realizations. But then they merged that management company into the public company, got a bunch of equity, and they started telling everybody it should trade on an earnings basis. And that created the incentive to basically juice the earnings and kind of make up the E. And he even said that on your show the other day. He talked about how it's such a great deal at a PE of 6, when in reality, this should trade on price to book, but price to non-marked up book. So he's made about $75 million at least selling stock on the back of what we think is just this big stock promotion. And I suspect that he or another insider took out margin loans, because when you look at how the stock dropped in the wake of our initial report, again, down 70% in 2 days, that looks to me like that was a margin loan just blowout there somewhere. And so it's quite possible that he's taken a lot more money off the table. So for all of his accusations of, you know, you guys covered, this guy's been running stock promotion, and he pocketed a lot of money on the back of it.
So let me go to two things as we wrap this up. One of your critiques was that his spouse, the CEO's spouse, was the CFO. I am told that that is no longer the case, and that may have been in response to your criticisms of that practice. Do you believe fundamentally that this is a fraudulent company?
So I think, look, these people are lawyers. They're very clever. I think it's quite possible they've gone just up to the line legally, and that it would be very difficult to prove fraudulent intent in these marks. That's the beauty of running a stock promotion with level 3 fair value accounting, because unless, if I'm a prosecutor, unless I can prove that what was in your head was that you knew the asset wasn't worth X, but you marked it there, I don't have a case. But one thing that I think is really important to talk about, and you guys touched on it with him, is this Peterson claim. And that's why he was on your show the other day, was because I brought up questions on Twitter about who the buyers of the Peterson claim were, and I questioned whether the company, which manages funds that are off its own balance sheet, whether the company moved part of the Peterson claim from its own balance sheet to an outside fund balance sheet that it manages and recorded a gain on that. And it turns out, after I tweeted that we found that at least 30% of that sale was to a Burford managed fund. And Chris Bogart didn't talk about that, and he's not really willing, I think, to have that conversation. But that, I think, is a very serious issue, because it really calls into question the proceeds that Burford's received on the Peterson claim, along with another question that nobody has posed, and it's a key question. Can that Peterson claim be satisfied in local currency legally? In other words, under U.S. court judgments, if Argentina did decide to pay it, could they pay it off in Argentine pesos? And that's something I think people also should start pressing the company on, because I think they might be surprised by the answer.
It's a complicated story. Carson Block, thank you for your time and trying to explain your position on it. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Power Lunch continues after this.